Today, I am thrilled to welcome one of the most powerful women in media, Paula Kerger. She's the longest-serving president and CEO of PBS. It's been an eye-opening year for the network, which marked its 50th anniversary amid the raging COVID-19 pandemic. Paula, welcome to Know Your Value. Let's talk about that. PBS, you say, was made for this moment. How were you able to fill the educational void that sort of dropped out into the open and became a reality for millions of children?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, and it's hard to believe that it's been a full year. We moved into a largely remote workforce within about 3 days. The biggest pivot was really around content. A few weeks before we went into our virtual world, I'd gotten a call from the Austin Buettners, the head of LA Unified, and he was anticipating their kids were going to be out of school. And what he was particularly concerned about is the kids that would not have access to broadband. So we run a very large broadband-based educational service where we deliver content, and he wondered if we could help pivot some of that content into broadcast as well. LA Unified actually happens to own a public television station, but they only have a couple employees. So our California stations quickly came together, LA station, San Francisco, others, and began to roll out what has been a fairly aggressive scope of work to help close the gap for kids that don't have access. And then for the kids that do have access to broadband, we've been focused on putting yet more content there. This is all curriculum-based. It's organized by K-12. And so if we didn't have that structure in place, if we didn't have relationships with school systems, I think we wouldn't have been able to quickly leap into this moment. And I would say the same with the scope of content that we've created and have put forward over the past year. Everything from content related to COVID and so forth, to content to help people that are missing performance and things that they may have had in their life, to frankly a wide range of programming that we brought forward after the murder of George Floyd. So it's, I think during every turn in this year, we've really taken the resources we've already built and then tried to extend that to meet the needs of the people that count on us.
You got a lot of threats from the last administration to defund public television. How did you all respond to those threats and strategize for that potential to become a reality?
Well, I think our greatest strength is we're actually locally based. All of our stations are independent. They're locally owned, operated, and governed in communities. And many of those stations have very deep relationships with their members of Congress, particularly because of the work I just talked about in education. And in fact, a number of our stations were created originally as being an educational resource. And so they work very carefully over the years to make sure that as legislators make very difficult decisions about where to put their resources, that they are aware of the contributions that the stations are making in their communities. Again, particularly serving people that don't have access to broadband. I keep coming back to that because I think that's such an extraordinary challenge. It's extraordinarily deep challenge in our country as we look at, economic gaps and so forth. Access to information is so critically important. And then we also are constantly on the Hill talking to legislators, just making sure that they see the work that we're doing. The president's budget, for 5 years, for 4 years, for 4 years zeroed us out. And but Congress put it back in. Ultimately, it's Congress's budget. The energy that goes into making the case constantly is I wish that energy could be put somewhere else. Maybe that's the way to say it.
Yeah, I hear you on that. How did you lead during the pandemic? What were some of the things that really worked for you?
I think the biggest point is communication. Frequent communication. You have to remember that people are all in their homes. Some of them are juggling families and children. Some of them are living alone. People feel isolated. There was so much swirling around them, particularly in the early days when people really weren't sure of what was going to happen and what was going to happen to our economy, whether their jobs were safe, all of that. And so I think the most important piece of that I would share for anyone looking back on this period and wondering, how did you manage through, is a relentless commitment to education. I put a team together that in the early days met daily and now meets roughly once a week, just to look at what we should be doing in terms of making sure teams stay together. I would say that the considerations for women in particular have been quite significant because I do have many people that work for me that have young children, and really paying attention to their needs, both in terms of, in some cases, we've allowed some job sharing, giving a lot of flexibility so that people can manage. You have to really pay attention to the fact that people are juggling a lot. And I do think that a lot of organizations focused on, let's just get the work done, let's see how it moves forward. But paying attention to where people are, where they are, and really paying attention to mental health. And I think that some of the mental health issues are going to be with us for quite some time. We have an employee assistance program. We talked about it a lot. Our organization is not one where people often talk about mental health, and we've tried to be more deliberate about that so that people understand that it's okay to say that, I'm struggling, I need help. But I think those are probably the most important learnings that I've had in just how to keep a team pulled together during what has been a unbelievably strange and difficult time.
Like we've never seen before. PBS President and CEO Paula Kerger, thank you so much for joining us.